Alright, so make sure you get your page titled Introduction to Fractions, because we just have 4 quick things that we just need to review to make sure you guys remember stuff about fractions. So first of all, let's talk about how you read fractions. If I gave you this fraction, how do I read that, everyone?
4/5.
So we say 4/5. What's another way to say that?
4/5.
Did you say, what word did you say? Over. Okay, what's another word besides over?
Above.
Nope, not above.
On.
Nope.
Out.
Out of. 'Cause think about it like a test or a quiz, right, guys? You got a 4 out of 5. Does that make sense? So what does that mean? Like, that's the whole thing with fractions. Like, you have to know what they mean. So that's why we have the whole 4 out of 5, because that tells me more what a fraction means than the rest of them. The rest of them is more how you say it, where 4 out of 5 gives you the meaning behind it. So what does it mean?
4 out of 5.
What does that mean?
You got 4 out of 5. There's 4 numbers out of 5.
So 5 is your what?
Denominator.
It's your denominator, which I can also call, if the number's on bottom in my denominator, it's always my whole. It's always your total, your whole or total. That 5's always going to be your whole or your total. That 5 is what makes it be a whole number if the number on top, your numerator, becomes a 5. So that 4 is what we call a part of the whole. It's how much you got correct out of 5. It's how many pieces of pizza you ate out of 5. It's the part of the entire whole piece. Does that make sense, guys? Because if we don't know what a fraction even means, it's hard to really do all of the operation pieces that go along with it. So that's really reading fractions. Let's talk about equivalent fractions. What are equivalent fractions? What in the world does that mean, Riley?
It means a fraction that has the same value as another fraction.
Good, a fraction that has the same value as another fraction, which means they are, what's another word for equivalent? They are equal. So they are equal fractions which means they mean the exact same. Different numbers, but they have the same decimal, the same percentage. You would get the same grade on a test, whether you got this fraction or this fraction. So, like for instance, if I gave you the example 15/20, what could I do to get an equivalent fraction of 15/20? There's two things that I could do. Chloe? I could divide by 5. And what's the rule? Whatever we do to the... Perfect. Whatever we do to the top, we have to do to the bottom. So 15 divided by 5 is? 3. And 20 divided by 5 is?
4.
So I know that 15/20 and 3/4 are equivalent fractions. If I got a 15 out of 20 on a quiz or a 3 out of 4 on the quiz, I got the exact same score. Does that make sense? Now, I divided there. What else could I do to 15/20 to get an equivalent ratio, or to get an equivalent fraction? Multiply. Do I care what number we multiply by? No, you can do any number as long as whatever you do to the top is the same thing you do to the bottom. Does that make sense? So I'm going to make it easy, and I'm just going to do times 2. 15 times 2 is what?
30.
20 times 2 is what?
40.
Which means that 15/20, 30/40, and 3/4 are all equivalent. If you got that grade on any quiz or test, you got what grade?
75.
You got a 75%. No matter which of those three you were given, you get a 75%. Do we remember all of that? So remember, when you do your project, guys, you have to give me lots more detail than I have written right here. Is that understood? The more detailed you are, the better grade you're going to get. Okay? Alright, simplifying. Fractions must always be in simplest form. No matter what, put it in simplest form. It's one of those like unwritten rules. It's always there. Always put it in simplest form. How do I put something in simplest form? So, equivalent fractions we can divide or multiply. Simplifying fractions we can only do what operation? Division. So if I do (81/99), I know that I'm going to divide. And whatever I do at the top, I have to do the bottom. So what am I going to divide out of 81 and 99, everyone? 9. Now I have a question. Could I have divided out of 3? Yeah, just how many times would I have to divide that 3 out? Not 3 times. Twice. Because 3 times 3 is 9. So, do I care what numbers we simplify by? No, as long as your answer is in simplest form in the end. Is that understood? So 81 divided by 9 is? 99 divided by 9 is?
11.
Which means that 81/99 simplifies down to 9/11, which also means that these two fractions are considered what? Equivalent. They are equal. Questions on simplifying? All of that's review, right guys? Okay, good. Was hoping so. Alright, last thing we have to learn, or review, is mixed to improper and improper to mixed. And I'm hoping it's a review, but we'll find out. So we'll start with mixed to improper. Someone give me a mixed number. Give me an example. Brock?
3 and 2/5.
Perfect. 3 and 2/5 is a mixed number. A mixed number is a whole number and a fraction written together. And I want to change it to an improper fraction. What's an improper fraction? Someone give me an example. Max? Its numerators are bigger than the denominator. So an example, Jared? 32/10. Excellent. So I want to change this mixed number to an improper fraction, which means I want the number on top bigger than the number on bottom. What do I do? Cole, what's the first thing I do?
Since it's 2 out of 5, 5 is like the whole, so, 3, you do 5 3 times.
Okay, which means I do what?
Simplify 5 times 3.
There we go. So I'm going to take that 5 times 3, which is what, everyone?
15.
And then what am I going to do?
Add it to 2.
Add it to 2. And 15 plus 2 is?
17.
Everyone?
17.
Now is that 17 going, what's that 17 going to be?
Numerator.
Good, so that 17 becomes your numerator. And then what is going to be my denominator?
5.
The 5. So you're going to keep that denominator the same. So 17/5 is the improper fraction to 3 2/5. Questions? Let's review, right? Okay, good. So for your project, you guys have to be able to show me the work, detailed work, and you have to be able to give it to me using words with steps. Is that understood? Alright, last one that we need to go over is improper to mixed. Somebody give me an example of an improper fraction. Kansas?
18 6.
Give me a different number.
7.
There we go. Okay, 18/7. So we want to change 18/7 into a mixed number, which means I want a whole number and a fraction. How do I do that?
Divide 18 by 7.
So which number goes inside the house?
18.
18. So we're going to put 18 in the house. 7 goes outside. Because that's how we always divide fractions, right guys? Top dog always goes in the house. 7 goes into 18 how many times?
2.
What's 2 times 7?
14.
18 minus 14.
4.
Okay, so do I have to keep going like we did with decimals? No, I get to stop. So you don't have to keep going because we're going to take this and turn it into a fraction now instead of turning it into a decimal. So, what's this 2?
The whole number.
Good, the 2 is my whole number. That number on top will always be considered your whole number. What's the 4? This is your numerator. The number you subtract will always be your numerator. Whatever number you have left over, your remainder, will always be your numerator. And then what's the 7? That number you divided into will always be your denominator. Which means, what's my mixed number? 2 4/7. And if we were to go from 2 4/7, should we get 18/7? You should be able to go back and forth interchangeably and always get that same answer back and forth no matter what. If you don't, you did something wrong. So you can always double check your answers. Does that make sense? Review?
Yes.
Remember all this?
Yeah.
Okay, so